Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Swallow the Stars. This will be part 41, chapter 41, entitled Nearer to the Past. Izuku stares up at the large house and tries to blink the shock out of his eyes. He's not really sure what he expected when Mina suggested a study group, and Bakugo decided his place was probably the only one big enough to accommodate them all. That also didn't risk Endeavor dropping by, but it hadn't been this. The house is beautiful, for one thing. Light tan brick with green accents for the roof, balconies, and windows, and it looks like it was custom built specifically to not have the same appearance as the houses around it. And for another, it's huge. Not as big as the facility, obviously, but at least 4 times the size of Aizawa's apartment, if not more. Blasty, you really live here? Mina asks, leaning around Izuku to stare at Bakugo with her eyebrows raised. Bakugo, predictably, gets prickly. No, I just brought you to some random-ass house. Yes, I fucking live here. Izuku thinks it's a valid question, considering that nothing about Bakugo really screams well off. If anything, given his weird inferiority complex that presents as a superiority complex, Izuku had kind of assumed the opposite. Hey, relax, guys, Kirishima says, wrapping his arm around Bakugo's shoulders and refusing to be thrown off. We just got here. Let's not fight before we even start studying. Don't tell me what to do, shitty hair. Bakugo finally succeeds in dislodging Kirishima's arm and starts marching up the path to his house. With a weird look over his shoulder, the rest of them, Kirishima follows, Sero and Kaminari soon joining. Instead of falling in line, Hitoshi drapes himself over Izuku's left shoulder, and Mina rests her chin on his right. It's still a little strange to Izuku that he's gotten more comfortable with touches from people who aren't his dad's or Hitoshi. Mina is easy to get along with and easy to relax around. Hell, everyone with him now is someone Izuku trusts enough that he doesn't flinch away anymore if they reach for him. They put in the effort to remember to wait for his attention if they're coming at him from the left side. They've all learned how to say a few things in JSL so that if he's nonverbal, they can manage a small conversation until someone tracks down Hitoshi or Bakugo to translate. With the approach of finals week and the promise of a practical exam, they've all even asked him for his thoughts on their quirks, looking for an outside opinion, his opinion, on how they can improve. They're his friends, and he loves them, and that's obvious enough to other people that Hitoshi had just felt justified in inviting them to celebrate Izuku's birthday a couple weeks ago. God, and his birthday had been amazing. Hitoshi had taken him out to lunch in a nearby cat cafe, paying for everything, the coffee, the food, and 2 hours with the cats, and calling it their first official date because a double date doesn't count, or something. Afterwards, they'd gone to an arcade where the rest of the Chaos Squad had joined them and dragged Izuku around to all of their favorite games, teaching him how to play and getting excited when he learned the mechanics enough to do well. Even Bakugo had thrown out some aggressive praise when Izuku had gotten the bottom slot on the leaderboard of Bakugo's favorite game. They'd all combined their ticket totals at the end to get Izuku anything he wanted from the prizes, which had made him start crying from how overwhelmingly happy he was, and they all piled into a group hug until he could fight off the tears. The end of the day had been dinner with his dads, Auntie Kayama and Hitoshi, followed by cake with presents and his choice of a movie. Izuku thanked Hitoshi several times over for the perfect day, and every time Hitoshi just smiled and kissed him and told him he's worth the effort and then some. There are times when Izuku doesn't believe him, but when he does, he can't say he's ever felt happier. Are you all right, Izuku? Shoto asked, stopping in front of him with a curious expression on his face. His internship had been good for him, in the same way that his ashi is good for him, and it shows in the way his posture is relaxed and open now, as opposed to how stiff and closed off he was at the beginning of the year. A smile stretches across Izuku's face, and he nods. I'm great, he says, and he's not lying. With his friends flanking him, Izuku starts up the walkway after Bakugo and the others. Surprisingly, Bakugo is waiting with his hand on the door, and he only opens it once everyone is clustered together again. I'm back, he calls into the house as he steps inside. There's a faint echo to his voice that betrays what must be an open interior, proven true when Izuku steps over the threshold, almost at the back of the group. I brought the idiots with me. Kaminari and Mina puff themselves up at the insult, but there's a casual affection lining the way they jab back at him that makes Izuku smile. Bakugo has an explosive personality, but at the core of it, he is a good person, and it's nice to know that Izuku isn't the only one who can see that. A few seconds later, a woman appears around the corner, and from how strikingly she looks like Bakugo, Izuku can only assume she is his mother. Katsuki, what have I said about yelling so much in the house? She's yelling just as loud. A pinched expression on her face that Izuku assumes is fake anger hiding amusement, makes him laugh as he steps out of his shoes and carefully nudges them into place against the wall. The woman appraises the group. I'm Bakugo Mitsuki. You can call me Mitsuki or Auntie, whichever you prefer. No honorifics from Katsuki's friends. I forbid it. If you're staying for dinner, my husband Masaru will be here as well then, so don't get all panicked if a guy with glasses walks in the door. Her eyes sweep over every face one by one, and Izuku watches the way she catalogues characteristics, hair, eyes, height, like she wants to commit them all to memory. He wonders how long it's been since Bakugo brought home a friend, let alone a whole group of them. Mitsuki's eyes pass over Izuku with the same attention to detail before moving on to Hitoshi beside him, and then they snap back to him, and her eyes narrow before going wide. Izuku? There's a picture of you in my house. My parents drag me to your grave every fucking year, yours and your mom's. Shit. It's been more than 2 months since that conversation with Bakugo, in one of the secluded teacher hallways of UA, and the words had completely slipped his mind until right now. How could he have forgotten? How could Bakugo have not told his own mom that poor little Izuku's still alive and kicking? He glances at Bakugo, who's looking at him with an intense expression, eyes a little wider than normal. So he'd forgotten too. He must have taken Izuku's words that he's no longer the boy Bakugo grew up with, that he doesn't want to reclaim that piece of his past to heart, and promptly shoved the conversation out of his mind. And now here they are, in Bakugo's house with his mom, staring down a ghost, and his friends looking lost and confused. Mina pokes his arm, and Izuku, for the first time in weeks, barely manages to hold in a flinch. Izuku, have you been here before? He bites his lip, gaze still locked with Bakugo's. He could say no. He's never been here before, which might be the truth for all he knows, but then he would have to face Mitsuki's doubt and risk his friends finding that picture of younger him. He could also say yes, risking a lie, then have to come up with an excuse that would satisfy his friends while knowing that Mitsuki would see right through him the whole time. You don't have to say anything, Hitoshi says, voice low, breath fanning across Izuku's skin as he leans close so only Izuku can hear him. Izuku's panic surges up inside of him, and he quickly turns his head to find Hitoshi's gaze, to ground himself there. He doesn't have to say anything, but they're already there. The damage has already been done, unless Izuku can force all his friends out of the house before they can see that damning picture that might be hanging over a small shrine. This is the reality he's stuck in. So he pulls in a deep breath and forces himself to find Mitsuki's face again. She looks confused and sad and concerned, but happy. Izuku trails off for just a second, trying to decide how he should phrase this. It's complicated, but I've been trying to find a way to tell you guys anyway, so now might be the best time, I suppose. He rubs the back of his head, fingertips slipping against freshly shaved hair. It's kind of a long story. Something snaps into place behind Mitsuki's eyes, and she straightens up. I'll make tea. Katsuki, go ahead and take your friends to the living room. Izuku, could you... She hesitates, wavering on the question. Could I ask you to help me? Izuku finds Hitoshi's hand and squeezes before letting go. Of course. He turns to his boyfriend with what he hopes is a reassuring smile. I'll be right there. Save me a spot. Hitoshi, bless him, smirks, and his posture falls into something relaxed and confident. I doubt that the living room in this house will be lacking for places to sit. He looks around at the rest of their friends and affects a bored expression. Well? With a fire lit under them, literally because Bakugo's hands start crackling half a second after Hitoshi's prompting, the group flies out of the entryway. Izuku can hear them talking to each other in low voices, but none of the words are loud enough for him to actually discern. Instead, he turns his attention properly back to Mitsuki. Did I ever come here? He asks, the words feeling like they're pulled from him by a force beyond his own willpower. Sorry, Mina asked, and I didn't know whether saying yes or no would be a lie. Mitsuki smiles at him, and it's sharp at the edges just like Bakugo's, but there's a wellspring of motherly affection that smooths it out. Yeah, Izuku, you and Katsuki play together over here all the time. She turns a little, gesturing for him to follow before guiding him deeper into the house. You know, your mother and I were best friends in university. We split up for a bit afterwards, but both of us getting lost in our career choices. When we both found out that we were pregnant at the same time, well, our friendship rekindled pretty quickly. They step into a large, beautiful kitchen. At this point, Izuku assumes that every room in the house is going to fit those two adjectives, and Mitsuki goes through the motion of filling and then starting a kettle. Katsuki was born first, and you followed a few months later. It was crazy how protective he was of you, especially once you two got to the age where you could crawl around. She laughs softly, and something in Izuku's chest pulls tight. It's hard to drag in his next breath. It hurts. Mitsuki, I'm sorry, can we not... I can't imagine what this must be like for you, but I don't... Fuck, why is he crying? Why does he always have to cry? Mitsuki makes a soft noise and moves closer to him. Holding out her arms like offering a hug to him is the easiest thing in the world, and honestly, maybe it is. Her last memory of him is probably of a bright and happy child with his hair and his freckles and his bright green eyes. She probably used to hug him a lot, even if the span of time between them and now is 3 times as long as she'd known him. Regardless, Izuku tries not to think about it too much when he steps forward and lets himself be held. "Oh, Izuku, honey, I'm sorry," she soothes, the gentle rocking of the hug at odds with how tightly she's gripping him. "This must be a lot for you." Izuku nods against her shoulder. "I don't remember anything about you, or Bakugo, or my mom." His voice is thick and wavering, but he tries to breathe and get a handle on himself before the stream of tears turn into full-on sobs. "I don't really know if I want to. I think it might hurt too much." Mitsuki's arms give a reassuring squeeze around him before she steps back, hands resting on Izuku's shoulders. "Okay. That's okay, Izuku." She has a very serious but also very open expression on her face, and Izuku sees more and more of Bakugo in her the longer he looks. "The past isn't as important as the present or the future. We'll just remedy this by having you over for dinner every now and then, okay?" Despite himself, despite the situation, Izuku hiccups a laugh and nods his head. "Yeah, okay. Dinner sounds nice." With a wicked grin, Mitsuki backs away entirely and returns to the counter, pulling out 8 mugs and setting them out on a large tray. Containers of sugar and milk follow, as well as a small plate of what seems to be matcha cookies. While she busies herself with that, Izuku takes out his phone and texts his dad. "So, forgot that Bakugo Mitsuki knew me pre-facility." "Shit, right. What's the plan?" "Telling the truth? Am I allowed to do that?" "As long as you stress that it's confidential information, yes. Although there's not a lot of risk involved with it anymore. It's mostly just what you're comfortable with." "Okay, I'll let you know if I end up telling them everything." "Remind me who all is included in them again." "Bakugo, Mina, Shoto, Kaminari, Kirishima, Sero, and Mitsuki. Obviously, Hitoshi already knows." "Yeah, all right. They all passed their homework from the discretion and confidentiality lesson last month, so it should be fine. Let me know if I need to come get you after." "I will. Love you." "Love you too, kid." "Everything okay?" Mitsuki asks, noticeably only after Izuku tucks his phone away. "Just checking in with my dad," Izuku says with a small smile. I want to tell you and the others the truth, and I had to make sure that that's a safe option." Mitsuki frowns and Izuku can see concerns turning over in her head, so he's quick to wave his hands in an attempt at dispelling them. "It's fine. I've been safe for a few years now, and Dad agreed that it's okay for me to tell you. There was just a point in time when it wasn't something I could disclose, and caution isn't exactly an easy habit to break." Mitsuki continues to stare at him, but her frown softens from something sharp into something worryingly wobbly. "So you weren't safe a few years ago?" Ah, shit. He'd really went and let it slip. He tries for a reassuring smile, and isn't completely confident that he hits the mark. "No, I wasn't. But I am now, and I'm really happy with where my life is currently. I'll tell you when we're in the living room with the others." With a brusque nod, Mitsuki seems to steel herself for the conversation to come. The kettle finishes boiling soon after, and Izuku insists on carrying the tray into the living room. Everyone has found a place to sit, and Izuku smiles gratefully at the open corner of the sofa next to Hitoshi. It's the perfect spot for him, close to the wall with an easy escape route, and absolutely no one sitting on his left. He sets the tray down on the coffee table, and Mitsuki shoos him away, taking over the task of pouring the mugs full and asking if anyone wants anything added. Izuku sinks into the comfortable sofa and smiles when Hitoshi slides closer to him, eliminating the space and pressing his thigh and knee flush against Izuku's. It's a comforting weight, and a familiar one. Not for the first time, Izuku lets himself soak in the feeling of how fucking happy he is to have Hitoshi in his life. Once everyone has a mug of tea, and Izuku has taken his first sip, he turns his torso enough to be able to see everyone properly. "So, I don't really know how to start this story," he says, meeting each curious gaze before looking down at his tea. "What I thought was the beginning is apparently closer to the second chapter." He takes a deep breath and lets it out slowly. Amahaki moves inside of him for the first time all day, sliding carefully from his ribs to his right shoulder and perching there carefully. Izuku welcomes the weight and the slight chill that settles under his skin. "I'm quirkless," he finally says, setting his tea aside and lifting his gaze. "The things that I can do, the power that I have, it's not a quirk. I was raised in a research laboratory that everyone there just called the facility. Bakugo and Mitsuki knew me before when I was a child, which leads me to believe that I was kidnapped and brought there. I always knew that the other kids had had that happen to them, but I really only have memories of growing up in that place, and as far as I knew at the time, I had been born there. He carefully launches into the whole story, his hands twisting together on his lap before Hitoshi takes one and squeezes it tightly. It's hard to talk about his life there, hard to talk about the surgeries and the tests and the survivor's guilt that still weighs him down. He very carefully doesn't mention the casualties he caused, just like he doesn't mention the kidnapping he and Hitoshi suffered through together. He keeps the full extent of Amahaki's power under wraps, too, because that's something that he hopes none of them ever have to see. By the time he catches up to present day, he's emotionally drained, and his body is tense from head to toe. But he squares his shoulders and looks up again at the people he's chosen to trust. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. I don't want to talk about this again after today, though, so get them out now or forever hold your peace. He tries to make his tone teasing. He thinks he succeeds because Hitoshi snorts a laugh beside him. Are you okay? Mina asks into the brief silence that follows. She leans toward him from her spot on the other sofa, her eyes searching his face for an answer. Izuku doesn't even have to think about his answer. I am now, yeah. He smiles at her and then at everyone else. I mean, I still have nightmares sometimes, and I see the school therapist frequently. Highly recommend, by the way. Kiyumi-san is amazing. But yes, I promise I'm okay, Mina. She's out of her seat immediately, crossing the space between them before leaning down to smother Izuku in a hug. She ends up in his lap. When he hugs her back, holding her close, and if she's silently crying against his shoulder, well, that can be a secret between the two of them. So, Kirishima starts, expression thoughtful. When you got quirk exhaustion after the USJ attack, what was that? Just general exhaustion, Izuku says. Amahaki takes a lot of energy for me to use, and given its nature, I really can get frostbite if I use too much for too long. All the things I've done with it, and all the side effects you've seen, are real, just so happens to fit nicely into the limits of a quirk when it's very much so not one. As he speaks, he slowly rubs his hand along Mina's spine, in no rush to urge her to get off of him or to let him go. Sero tips his head to the side. Dude, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that there's a god inside of you. Izuku laughs quiet enough to not hurt Mina's ears, but it's still genuine, coming from a place low in his gut and traveling outward. Yeah, you and me both. I'm lucky, though. Apparently my sympathy for it made Amahaki like me, which is why it listens to me and tries really hard not to kill me. It could kill you? Kaminari squeaks, eyes wide. Kami, it's a god, Izuku says, a teasing note to his voice. He's emotionally exhausted, yeah, but being able to talk freely about this, to borderline joke about it, feels really good. Of course it could kill me if it wanted to. Hell, it wouldn't even have to want to. I just have to push my limits too far and that would be the end of me. He risks a glance over at Mitsuki, who's been awfully quiet, and finds her crying. It guts him all over again, but when she catches him looking, she smiles wide and wipes at her cheeks. I'm glad you're okay now, she says, and Izuku can't respond in any other way than to give her a smile of his own. Eye bags, Bakugo says from his posted position in an armchair. You don't seem surprised. Icy hot either. Oh, I knew already, Hitoshi says with a shrug. He told me after our first year together in middle school. He doesn't mention the kidnapping either, which Izuku was grateful for. Shoto tilts his head to the side, considering. I'm not surprised, he settles on. I didn't know it would be like this, exactly, but I knew that something bad had to have happened to him in the past. His mismatched eyes find Izuku's, and there's a world of familiar trauma hidden in their depths. It's not hard to see abuse and scars, if you're used to looking for them. The god thing is new, though. His lips twitch into a smile, practically beaming for him, and Izuku returns it with a bright grin of his own. Anyways, Izuku says, all the bastards from the facility are taken care of. He doesn't say imprisoned or dead, even though that would be more honest. I trust you all to keep this information to yourselves, though. I may not be in danger from them anymore, but I still don't want to deal with the media attention if this gets out. He doesn't have to say anything more than that. Every pair of eyes that looks back at him is full of determination to keep his secret. After a few more moments of silence, Mina finally pulls away from him and gets to her feet. Her face is free of tears, and she looks much more put together. Sweeping her gaze around the room, she puts her hands on her hips. Didn't we come here to study? Life-altering revelations aside, I'm still going to fail the English final if I don't get some help. A collective groan rises from Kirishima, Kaminari, and Sero. Hitoshi doesn't make a sound, but the way he deflates against Izuku's side tells him all he needs to know. With finals only a week away, this probably isn't going to be the last time they have a study group like this, not when more than half of them are struggling in one or more subjects. They break out their study materials, and Mitsuki takes that as her cue to leave, though not before making sure they all know that there are snacks in the kitchen that they're free to eat and to make themselves at home. Bakugo takes over directing them all, breaking them off into groups based on what subject needs to be covered. Shoto is put in charge of tutoring science. Izuku's tasked with teaching English, and Bakugo himself covers math and any other random subject that he might be needed with. Kaminari struggles with history most of all, so Bakugo drags him to his side of the room. It's really pleasant, the way they all find their spots and settle down with textbooks and notes, covering material and trying to cram as much information as possible into their heads. Izuku finds himself smiling before long, and the satisfaction and peacefulness doesn't leave him for the rest of the day. All right, listeners. Hope you all are still enjoying this. This concludes Chapter 41 of Swallow the Stars. Chapter 42 will be next. Let me know your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.